title of my sermon this morning is called Champion Dads. I want you just for a moment to imagine this stadium filled with cheering fans, almost like Quebec yesterday when the Boks played against the Babas. The scoreboard is lit, the air is electric, and on the field stands a man, not wearing a sports jersey, but in the everyday uniform of fatherhood. A work shirt, maybe a worn pair of jeans, perhaps some old dirty scuffed shoes, perhaps a suit and tie. And in the middle of the stadium, with all these cheering people watching on, he's not holding a trophy, but rather the hand of a child. In the eyes of God, that man is a champion. Not because he's perfect, but because he shows up. He fights for his family. He runs the race of faith with endurance, and he passes the baton of fatherhood. I haven't got one particular reading this morning. I've got quite a few, just single verses, because today lends itself to that. In 2 Timothy 4:7 I read, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I've kept the faith. Paul is not only speaking here to Timothy, or to pastors and to ministers or missionaries, but he's speaking to every father who chooses to lead his home with courage, with integrity, and with love. I'm very aware of the fact that we have not all had the honor of having fathers who have been the model of perfection. I'm very aware that so many children suffer abuse, hardship, deprivation at the very hands of the men that they call fathers. Not all fathers are perfect, and some children would rather not even have them around them. You know what I'm speaking of. And I stand here today incredibly humbled, because I had a very privileged childhood. I had a dad who took interest in absolutely everything that I did, but in the same way, my other 4 siblings can all say the same. There was nothing that escaped the same. And we each had the opportunity to be loved and cared for by him. He was not perfect in every way, but he was our dad, our daddy, our papa, our friend to the final. I can remember my dad was an avid sportsman, and I can remember sitting on the floor next to his big armchair, and he always sat with his hands resting on the armrests like this, with either a cup of coffee or a glass of water next to him, and we used to watch cricket together. We would plan the game. We would decide who should bat next. We would discuss where the fielders had to be, to the irritation of everybody else in the lounge watching. He was also the man who was the driving force behind me reaching the heights that I reached on the sport field. Every afternoon, he would get into the car and drive behind me as I'm riding, with his stopwatch in one hand and his whistle in the other. Well, sometimes in his mouth because he couldn't hold it, he had to hold the steering. But he would drive behind me as I was doing my road work and getting fit. And if he blew the whistle once, meant I was running too fast, slow. If he blew it twice, it meant speed up, you being lazy. I remember him working incredibly long hours and having a second job over weekends so that he could fend for our family. A large family, 5 kids, plus my gran and my mom's sister Rosie, plus my Oma, and anybody else that my brother brought home so that they could mend their wings, which were a bit broken. Many times over weekends, we had our own little family band. My eldest brother Carl on the piano, my dad on the banjo, my brother John on the drums, and I'm on the guitar with my mom and Pam, my sister, doing the vocals, and Alf playing soccer somewhere. He did it. These are times that I really remember, and as I get older, I remember them even more vividly. Times when time stood still, and we could just be. I get that. But I also get the fact that we're not all that privileged and spoiled. I get it, that there are many people out there who would rather not speak about that person. But today, I want to give you a picture of the man God has called to be a father. The man God has called to be the champion in your family. So what are the characteristics of a champion dad? And the first one is that champions show up like that man in the stable, just holding the hand of a child. A champion dad doesn't have to be flawless. He doesn't have to be perfect. He just has to be present. Not on the phone or behind his computer, but present. He needs to be the one who is there at the dinner table, at the games, when we're doing homework, when we've got chores to do, working with those precious children that God has gifted us with. Helping by example, not by words. I know that we live lives that are so crammed and so busy. We leave for work early in the morning and we get home late at night. There's so many expectations that are placed on our parents, and especially on fathers. But we need to learn to be consistent. And I would take the example from the scriptures of Joseph, the father of Jesus. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't understand everything that was going on. But he was there. He was present. He protected. He guided. And he provided. And more than that, he taught Jesus the skills of carpentry. He taught him the value of hard work and good work. Not shoddy work, but good work. He taught the best of what he knew to his son, Yeshua, Jesus. So what can I take away from this? presence at the dinner table, at school events, and in moments of prayer speaks louder than any sermon could ever speak to any of your children. Being at church with your children, not sending them to church, but bringing them to church and being present with them there is probably one of the most important things you could do. It is not a case of do as I say, it's a case of do as I do. The second thing I realize is the champions lead with love. And I see this in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, where Paul reminds fathers not to provoke their children to anger, but to bring them up in the knowledge and training and instruction of the Lord. I know that it's sometimes so much easier just to punish, or to correct, or to discipline, or to be harsh. But is that the way of love? Should we not rather teach our children the way of the Lord? Teach them the Word. This book is the most incredible book. I said it at the women's breakfast that I was speaking at yesterday, and that's why I wasn't here. That this book, Bible, stands for basic instructions before leaving earth. And this is what we need to know. And friends, we cannot teach it to our children if we don't know ourselves. We need to get this word into our hearts. But more than that, we need to be able to teach our children how to pray. Our dads are called to be the priests in our home. And leadership in the home is not about control, but rather about servant leadership. We should rather do than expect other people to do. We should do it first. It is so much easier to hand out instructions than to do work. So much easier. And you've all worked under bosses as well. Where do I find my example of the servant leadership in the scriptures? Well, I find it in John chapter 13, the night before the crucifixion, the night before the Last Supper. When the disciples arrive at the upper room, Jesus is the one who puts the towel around his waist and takes the basin of water and washes his disciples' feet. Champion dads wash their families' hearts with encouragement, with forgiveness, and with grace. Please remember that love covers a multitude of sins, and when we are hands-on, there is so much more that our families can achieve. The third thing I know about champions is that they fight for their families. The enemy on this earth, Satan, let's call him what he is out to kill, to steal, and destroy our families. He doesn't want healthy, happy families. He wants broken, disjointed homes where there is no love. But our champion dads are the ones who stand that gap, who stand up to this, and who say, no, it will be done in a different way. They're the ones who fight for us spiritually and who pray for their children. Champion dads are the ones who encourage them to pray with their children and for their children. Please don't leave your children to their own devices. Rather teach them the way to live. We've got into a society at the moment where we let our kids do whatever they like. We stuff some money in their hands and go off and enjoy themselves. No. It's not the way to live. We're called to fight children. Where do I find this? I find it in Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 14, where it is written, fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. That, dads, is what you're called to do. This is not a fight with fists, no. It's not a fight standing up and seeing how hard I can kick somebody. But rather it's a fight on my knees, with my scriptures in front of me, and my head bowed in prayer. That is how we fight. Not physically. The fourth thing I know about a champion is that a champion passes the baton. Because a true champion dad thinks beyond his own lifetime, who thinks about the generation to come and the legacy that they're going to be. How well I remember my dad taking our 3 boys to the garage every time we visited. And we visited a lot, and often, and over weekends, Saturdays and Sunday lunches were always spent together. And he would take the boys into the garage, and he would teach them how to clean and pack the tools that were in the garage. Every tool in my dad's garage had its own place, and everything had to be clean and neat. He had oilcloths. You know what oilcloths are? And he taught the boys how to wipe down every tool once a week. How to wipe down every tool that it was clean and be hung back in its right place. There was never a nail or a screw that it was in the wrong place. Never. There was never anything just lying around in the garage. And I dare you to walk into the garages of our sons today. It's exactly the same. Meticulous. Right to the end. Today I still hear my boys say often, I wonder what Grandpa would say about this, or Grandpa would say about that. My dad, I told you, the big armchair with his hands on the armrest, well, that chair's in my eldest son's house. And just last week, he's got a Great Dane dog. His name, Bonnie's about this tall. She's huge. And Bonnie was getting cold. I live in Bloemfontein. And Bonnie got onto Grandpa's chair. Brian took a photograph and said, I wonder what Grandpa would say now. Well, before my sister and I, were even taught to drive a car, he taught us how to change a wheel, how to replace the brake pads, how to check the oil and the water, and how to put in our own fuel. So he would go to the garage. It was called Goldat's Garage, close to where we lived. And he would say to the petrol attendant, no, let her put it in herself. Because he believed that we needed the skills to cope with life. And Fricky, the dad to our 3 boys, well, he taught them how to be hands-on all the time. In fact, they called him MacGyver. He taught them how to do things from a young age. He taught them the lesson of being in the garage with him. And that legacy lives on in our boys today. 3 young men who, well, they're not so young anymore, are able to do, to repair, to help, to encourage, and to be with their children now. Because Fricky was always there with our boys. I'll never forget, at Jeffrey's 21st birthday, we were all sitting around a table. He didn't want to party, and we were having sushi. Today I told the biggest lie to my mother. She said, we made our own sushi that night. My mother looked at me and said, my girl, I'm not eating raw fish, am I? I said, never. I repented. Friends, we all learn legacy. We learn it. It's something that we need to see. It's not picked up or handed down. We laugh at them now, and we make fun of the way that things are done by the older generation. But they taught us. And that legacy remains. And this is what a champion dad does. Those of you who have been to my house will know that Tricky doesn't let me wash dishes. Ever. Unless he's cut his finger, then I'm going to wash the dishes. What do our boys do? You can't. They wash the dishes. You see, it's something they grew up with. It's something that they've seen. And it's something that they do. They've passed the baton. A relay race cannot be won until the baton crosses the finish line in the hand of an athlete. If it's not in your hand, you haven't finished the race. If you drop the baton along the way, well then you've got to pick it up. Pick yourself up and carry on running. And this happens. Mistakes happen. Sometimes fouls are committed in that relay race and the team is disqualified. But they don't go and sit down and moan about that. They pitch. You pitch up for the next race and they run again. And I read this in Psalm 78, verse 4, where it says, we will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. That is the baton that we are called to pass. You see, your legacy is not what you leave to your children one day, but rather what you leave in them. That is the important thing. What are the things that the children or people will say about you at your funeral one day when you're no longer on this earth? What are the things that you have done that they will continue to do? How will your life impact the next generation? How will it impact the children who are left behind? Will they continually think of the way you would do things? Or would they rather say, well, I'm not going to do it that way? Dads, you may not feel like a champion every day. You may feel tired, unnoticed, and even unqualified. But remember, God does not call the perfect. He perfects the call. And so my challenge to you today is show up. Show up even when it's hard. Show up even when you're called to the principal's office because your kid has been naughty at school. Show up. Fight for your family. But fight in prayer and your example of walking with the Lord. And my friends, pass that baton. Pass it on to the generation that comes. I want to end with a story. I'm going to read it because I'm going to leave stuff out that I shouldn't. I was watching some little kids play soccer. These were kids who were only 5 or 6 years old. But they were playing a real game, a serious game. 2 teams, complete with coaches and uniforms and parents watching on the sideline. I didn't know any of them. So I was able to enjoy the game without the distraction of being anxious about winning or losing. I wish the parents and the coaches could have done the same. The teams were pretty evenly matched. I'll call them Team 1 and Team 2. Nobody scored in the first half. The kids were hilarious, they were clumsy and terribly inefficient. Almost like our funny team. They fell over their own feet, they stumbled over the ball, they kicked the ball and missed, but they didn't seem to care. They were having fun. In the second half, Team 1's coach pulled off what must have been his best team and put in the reserves, the scrubs, except for the best player, who was now the goalkeeper. The game took a dramatic turn. I guess winning is important, even when you're 5 years old. Because the Team 2's coach left his first team on the field, and the Team 1's scrubs were no match for him. Team 2 swarmed all over the little guy who was now the goalie. He was an outstanding athlete, but he was no match for the 3 or 4 other players in the other team that were also very good. And Team 2 began to score. The lone goalie gave it everything that he had, recklessly throwing his body in front of every oncoming ball and valiantly trying to stop them. But Team 2 scored 2 goals in quick succession. It infuriated the young boy, and he became a raging maniac, shouting, running, diving. With all the stamina he could muster, he covered the boy who had the ball, but the boy passed the ball to another player, and ding, in the goal, behind him, and they scored the 3rd goal. I quickly learned who the goalie's parents were. They were nice, decent-looking people. I could tell his dad had just come from the office. He still had his suit and tie on. And they yelled encouragement to their son. I became totally absorbed, watching the boy on the field and his parents on the sideline. But after that 3rd goal, the kid changed. You could see it was no use. Couldn't stop. He didn't quit. But he became quietly desperate, futility written all over him. His father changed too. He'd been urging his son to try harder, yelling advice and encouragement. But then, he changed. He became anxious. He tried to say it was okay to hang in there, but he grieved for the pain his son was feeling. And after the 4th goal, I knew what was going to happen. I've seen it all. The little boy needed help so badly, and there was no help to be had. He retrieved the ball from the net, handed it to the referee, and then he cried. He stood there, with huge tears rolling down his cheeks, and he went to his knees, put his fists to his eyes, and cried the tears of the helpless and the broken-hearted. When the boy fell to his knees, the father started onto the field. His wife clutched his arm. Jim, don't, Jim, embarrass him. But he tore loose from her and ran onto the field. He wasn't supposed to. The game was still in progress. Suit and tie, dress shoes and all. He charged onto the field. And he picked up his son so that everybody would know that this was his boy. And he hugged him, and he held him, and he cried with him. I've never been so proud of a man in my life. He carried him off the field, and when he got close to the sideline, I heard him say, Scotty, I'm so very proud of you. You were great out there. I want everyone to know that you are my son. Daddy, the boy sobbed. I couldn't stop them. I tried, Daddy. I tried and I tried. And they scored on me. Scotty, it doesn't matter how many times they scored on you. You're my son, and and you can't stop them, it means a lot to you to know that that doesn't matter to those who love you. The little guy went back onto the field, and they scored 2 more times, and it was okay. In life, I get scored on every day. I recklessly throw my body in every direction. I fume and I rage and I struggle with temptation and sin with every ounce of my being. And Satan laughs. And then he scores again. And the tears come. And I go onto my knees, sinful, convicted, and helpless. But then, my Father rushes right onto that field, right in front of the whole crowd, the whole jeering, laughing world, and he picks me up, and he hugs me, and he says, "Jen, I'm so proud of you. You're so great." And I want everyone to know that you are my child. And because I control the outcome of this game, I declare you the winner. Because that's what we're called to do. We're all called to look up to our dad up there in heaven. I don't know what you call him. But you're called to look at him. And fathers, you are called to imitate the example he sets for you. And I'm going to ask all men in the church, please, to stand up. Stand up for me now. All the men in the church. All the men in the church. All the men in the church. Come on, baby. And I want to pray for you. Lord, I thank you for each and every man in this church today. I thank you for each father. For each father figure in our lives. Lord, I ask that you would strengthen them today to be the champions in faith, love, and perseverance. Father, I ask that you would lead them with humility, with protection and courage, and inspire in them integrity. And may their children rise up